Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'm very pleased to introduce the next session, which will be on renewable energy skills, occupations, education and training. We have a distinguished panel of experts, and the moderator will be Mr. Frank Wouters, who is Deputy Director General at IRENA since September 2012. He has over 20 years of international experience in the field of renewable energy, and he held several senior management positions in leading organizations and institutions in the field of renewable energy and sustainability. And before joining IRENA, he served as the director of Masdar Power, a developer, as you know, of renewable energy projects in the UAE. We are very pleased to have Frank moderate this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rabia. Before we start our very interesting panel discussion, I would like to invite Hugo Lucas to give a brief presentation to build the foundation for that discussion.
Thank you very much, Frank. Good afternoon, everybody. We have all seen all these figures, and also we have already discussed not only about the potential that renewable energy has in delivering new green jobs, but also about one problem that we are facing, and it could be even worse problem in the future, which is that the offer in education is not responding to this demand from the market. And we are bringing here figures from the wind sector, from Europe, from EWEA, and a study on EWEA, in which while the renewable energy sector is demanding more engineers than an average sector of the economy, on the other hand, the education is offering a flat rate of engineers. So the people that is suitable to work in the renewable energy sector is not there, and is not going to be there, is not going in sufficient number out of the universities of Europe today. And this can be quantified in numbers, in number of full-time jobs equivalent, also for Europe and for wind, more than 10,000 jobs in 2020 and 50,000 jobs in 2013 in the different segments of the value change. So basically, what is happening now? We have a shortage, so renewable energy sector is demanding, the education is not responding, and the sector is looking to another industries, another activities where people have similar skills, and they are getting these people on board and doing train on the job. And this is a very costly and risky strategy. And few examples I wanted to bring here. For instance, the secretary for the Chinese renewable energy industry is a lady that studied economics, and they has learned everything on renewable energy already on the job, working in the industry association. My very good friend Stefan Schuring from the German think tank World Future Council is an architect. And he did studies on energy efficiency on buildings, but he was only working afterwards and basically learning by himself that developed the knowledge and the skill to work in the renewable energy sector. In the bottom we have Tabare, the responsible for renewable energies and WWF, and he is an engineer from the oil sector. And finally, the professor from the University of Arizona, Mr. Pasqualetti, is one a geophysic that realized that renewable energy curriculum is not existing in the university, and he was one of the first to develop one. And these figures are very small from here. Yes, the offer of education. I believe that you are aware that in IRENA we are running a project called IRENA Renewable Energy Learning Partnership, where we have databases of all the education offered in the renewable energy sector for all the technologies. And you can see that 36% of the education in renewable energy is offered in Europe, 39% is offered in the 3 countries of North America, 0.3 in Central America, 5 in Africa. So it is clear that the offer once is insufficient and there is a geographical imbalance. And if we look now to the users, so from which countries people is searching, in which countries people is searching for a job opportunity and education in renewable energy, and we see that the more active users, future students, future professionals of renewable energy are coming from Asia. We have, you see it better than me, so I will not repeat the figures, but the important thing is it's also an imbalance in the demand, and in some regions the offer is clearly insufficient if we take into consideration the interest that is to enter into this market. This is the distribution by technology. I don't want to say that this is unbalanced because, of course, the job opportunities in ocean sector, they are a lot less than for solar, but what we can see is that at least the offer in education, it follows more or less the interest that the market has to attract new career opportunities. And just wanted to look more into detail, for instance, to the geothermal. We can see that the education in geothermal is pretty much focused in North America, in Europe, and of course Japan and Philippines, which are leading countries, and New Zealand, which are the 3 leading countries in geothermal technologies. So what we can see also in this graph, that for instance for Africa, for all the Rift Valley, where there's a huge geothermal potential, and where there are countries like Kenya being leaders of development in geothermal, one of the barriers that these regions are facing, the Andean region is another example, is the lack of education offered, the lack of education skills. And one more comment on this gap is also that this gap is seen not only in the more technical-oriented skills, but it's also for other ancillary professionals like policymakers. Another clear one identified already in the IRENA capacity building strategy is the finance institutions. Finance institutions, their main core business, of course, is not renewable energies, but since they don't have the knowledge on renewable energy, for them to do a due diligence assessment of a project is very difficult. So another of the barriers is not only the professionals that directly work in the sector, but also the professionals that work in another sectors related with the renewable energies. And then regarding also this imbalance or this strategy on how the different markets and countries are responding, we have here that in the universities, you can find in Germany up to 380 curricula that have components on renewable energy. Then you have, on the other hand, Mexico, that was the second country with more investment in renewable energies in 2012, 1.9 billion. Only after Brazil, that 14 universities has incorporated or developed some kind of renewable energy curricula, and we have, for instance, Uruguay that is now implementing a strategy to include it. They have identified the renewable energy as one of the priority sectors for rural development, and they have identified which careers at present have a curriculum for which they can use to build on. But at present, there is no specific renewable energy education, but at least they have identified which engineers could be further skilled and educated to work in the renewable energy sector. And we have to take into consideration that in a few years, Uruguay is going to pass from 0 to 1.2 gigawatt of wind installed capacity. And then which policy recommendation or best practices that we have identified in the report. Of course, you have to plan in advance which are going to be the people that your market is going to demand. So when you have all these policies to deploy large-scale renewable energy, you have to, in advance, identify which are going to have the required skills. And I would like to mention that IRENA, together with other leading institutions, as the German Cooperation, the Spanish Renewable Energy Agency, of the National Renewable Energy Laboratory of US, we have worked in a methodology, in a tool, to do this capacity needs assessment for the renewable energy sector in a systematic way. It's called CADRE. Harmonization of the curriculum. This is very important. With an harmonized curriculum, workers can work from a company to another company or from a country to another country. So these efforts, for instance, in the European Union, will deliver most efficient education. And also, the accreditation, particularly for vocational training, particularly for installers, the accreditation of the professional is a guarantee of the quality of the work to be delivered. Another ones, incorporating renewable energy into technical and tertiary curricula. We have already mentioned the examples of Germany, Mexico, and Uruguay. Developing training institutes and centers of excellence. That was also has been the strategy from Mexico. They just award $50 million for 3 centers of excellence, one in geothermal, one in solar, one in wind, which is a cluster of the existing universities on the existing education professionals and researchers working already in Mexico that have now the mandate to develop a specific curricula to work with the private sector and to deliver this professional. Financial support, we have here in the panel the distinguished representative delegate from Malaysia. He will talk about grants and fiscal measures to promote education. Public-private partnerships, I think, were also mentioned by my colleague Rabia this morning, also in research and development, but in education very often, like is the case of the Spanish School for Industry skills that the government identify and get together with the private sector. There is also the initiative that we will discuss for the wind sector of BZEE. And finally, there is also non-direct measures, but there are policies that they are demanding renewable energies on buildings, and they are also demanding mandatory operation and maintenance of these installations, and of course only 35 installers can do this operation and maintenance, and then also there is the possibility that the person that goes to this 35 professional can have fiscal discounts. How the industry also has, the private sector has reacted to this challenge. We have with us a representative from this initiative. They have clustered together. They have developed a joint curricula. They are training under the same curricula professional that they become freelancers that can work for any of the companies. There is a database, and depending on the demand, this person can work in any wind farm in any part of the world. But I believe our colleague, Mr. Gerard, will explain more in detail this initiative. Of course, knowledge, kind of one-stop shop of all the information. The European Union has set this knowledge gateway for renewable energy and skills, so where professionals of education, they can exchange their experience. Policymakers, they can also exchange their experience, and the industry can already tell the policymakers which are the skills that they start to identify their gap, or which are the skills that they will in the future need. And there is platform to exchange knowledge as the tool to facilitate education and training. And finally, I think that we all agree that the best investment we can do is education very early, all along the education path, starting from the elementary school. This is the best investment we can do, and this will for sure will assure the energy transition and avoid this gap of qualified human skills. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hugo, for that very interesting presentation. Now, I would like to briefly introduce the panelists, but I would also like to ask them if they can, before they get into the subject matter, maybe briefly mention what they're doing in their respective organization, what their background is. I think today, if the motto or the mantra of the sector and many of our policymakers is jobs, 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 then I think the mantra of today's panel session is skills, skills, skills. And as Hugo has laid out in his presentation, there is many things to address. To my left, actually for the viewers to my right, I have the pleasure of Ms. Paolo Mazzucchelli, who's Secretary General at the Association of European Renewable Energy Research Centers, EUREC. Next to her we have Olga Striecka-Ilina, who works for the International Labour Organization. And then we go into the public sector. We have Mr. Christian Petrick, who's with All Green Energies and liaised to the IEA RETD. Mr. Ali Asghar Sher Mohammed, Chief Operating Officer at Sustainable Energy Development Authority in Malaysia. Next to him is Mr. Gerard McGovern, who is with BZEE Academy. And last but not least, Mr. Axel van Perval, who's Managing Director of Alingo. In this discussion, I would like to first better understand what the gaps and the barriers are, and also what some of the challenges are which surround this space. And I would like to maybe first start to my right and ask that question. What is, in your perspective, what are the major skill gaps in the renewable energy sector, and how critical are their impacts? And then beyond that, what are the challenges in providing qualified human resources to a rapidly expanding renewable energy industry? And please try to be concise, but also very specific, so that it's as helpful as we can.
Thank you very much, Frank. I will do my best. I come from EUREC, which is an association of universities and research centers located in Brussels. Since 2002, EUREC has been coordinating a European Master in Renewable Energies, which is taught in 9 universities located in 7 European countries. The first intake of the Master was launched in 2002, so today we have around 500 students who have graduated from our master. Of course, there's a majority of students who come from European countries. However, we are more and more attracting students from non-European countries. Actually, last year, it was the first year where we had more students coming from non-European countries rather than European countries. However, well, as you can imagine, our master course has changed since 2002. It is for sure one of the pioneer courses in this area. Since 12 years ago, renewable energy was still a niche area where a lot of development still needed to raise. So we have, of course, had to face a lot of challenges and respond to these challenges, for instance, in terms of the courses which are offered by the universities. Of course, today we offer courses in the most important, also in terms of employment, renewable energy technologies, such as wind and solar energy. However, a couple of years ago, we've also decided to launch a course in one of these emerging technologies where we feel that there is more need for undergraduate people, and this is ocean energy. Moreover, we are more and more focusing on what are cross-cutting technologies. So what is important, of course, is not only to develop the technologies, such as wind and solar, but also to focus on how to ensure that renewable energies are more and more integrated into transmission grid systems, for instance. So we are now offering a course on grid integration. And then since our course is very much engineering oriented, so of course there are a lot of engineering, let's say, professionals which are needed. However, we are in the process of launching a new master course more related to management, to project management. So where we put together, of course, technical expertise with more management skills. Because there's a need, of course, the renewable energy projects are becoming more and more complex, and therefore there's a need for people who also have managerial skills in order to be able to deal with these projects.
Thank you. And then Olga, what's your view on this?
Thank you very much, Frank. And also thank you very much for inviting me to this event, because in fact you are partly doing ILO jobs, because we are the ones who've been promoting green jobs very much. And of course it's the first conference on jobs in renewable energy sector, but of course it's not the first conference on green jobs. As such, we have done quite a lot of work. I come from the branch of the Implement Policy Department, which is called Skills and Employability, and I'm specialized in anticipation of future skills demand, not only for green jobs, not only for renewable energies, but more broadly. And as part of that specialization of mine, we actually did several years ago quite a lot of work on skills demand for green jobs. Some of that publications are left outside so people can have a look, and you can also find them all online. So one of those efforts we made was also a report which we prepared in 2011 on skills and occupational needs for renewable energy sector specifically, which covered over 30 countries and which was based more or less on qualitative case studies. So it's a bit anecdotal, there is not so much hard data. But nevertheless, it did bring a lot of interesting and hopefully useful findings, some of which were used also in the IRENA jobs report, which is very impressive, and I would like to congratulate IRENA on doing a really good job about jobs. So that report in 2011 actually identified over 150 core occupations for the renewable energy sector, alongside the value chain. And the value chain, of course, is quite broad, so it starts from equipment manufacturing and distribution, and then goes to project development, construction, installation, operation and maintenance. For bioenergy, of course, it's also biomass production. And here the first challenge, I would say, comes, which of course results also in skill shortages. In terms of quantity, demand across the value chain is not distributed equally. We have specific booms when there is a sudden installation of large capacities, especially when it's a new energy coming into a country. And of course, most skill shortages do appear in the project development stage, and especially in construction and installation. But nevertheless, we shouldn't also overlook the skill shortages in the part of the value chain which is related to operation and maintenance, because we can also speak about more short-term demand and longer-term demand, and therefore also shorter-term skill shortages and longer-term skill shortages. So when we speak about those booms, of course, they affect differently different countries. If it's a country where already there is some capacity established, there is already some training supplied for renewable energy, or more broadly, there is a good quality education and training for engineering and technical occupations in place, it's easier to adjust it. Even though it might be a cost for on-the-job retraining, it is still easier to retrain an engineer for a specific renewable energy technology than a person who doesn't have any engineering degree at all. And the same applies to installers, the same applies to technicians. So in developing countries, of course, the situation is incomparably more challenging. This is one thing. And another thing, it's also important to take into account that skill shortages that appear in the renewable energies, they are not unique for renewable energy sector. So for example, when we speak the acute problem of lack of engineers and technicians, and also skilled installers. These are all STEM-related occupations: science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And these skill shortages, they appear across all sectors and all countries, developed and developing. And therefore, there is even more competition among sectors and among countries for the same type of certificates, qualifications, and degrees. It's a huge issue. And of course, we can discuss later on what could be the solutions, but it's not certainly to overlook. But what is also important, these are not only technology-related occupations. There are quite a lot of occupations which are cross-cutting across the whole value chain. So these are people who work in legal occupations, in marketing, in communications, in sales, in finance, in lobbying, procurement, training, public administration. So these ones also need to be retrained, or their occupations have to be expanded during their degree training or vacation training to take into account renewable energies requirements for specific occupations for renewable energies. What is important and the specific challenge for renewable energies, when we came up with these 150 occupations, we saw that actually, unlike in many other sectors when we speak about green jobs, here, for this particular industry, it is really true that occupations tend to be at a higher skill level. So it's medium level skills that come from technical vocational education training and higher level skills, tertiary education. And a big issue is also the attractiveness of technical vocational education and training, and the ability to attract more people and get them graduated with these technical occupations. Another thing, and this is the last thing which I would like to mention, there are also some skills missing across many green jobs, and this is not really exclusion also for the renewable energies. These are core skills. So there are quite a lot of them, like environmental awareness, motivation, and leadership. What I hear actually from people from very different countries, it's leadership, leadership, and leadership. Business leadership, but also governmental leadership, regional leadership, to expand the capacities to tap on those potential employment opportunities. You really need people to take decisions. Negotiations, systemic thinking, entrepreneurship, because it's not enough to know something. You actually have to be able to apply that to the reality and come up with a specific business strategy which would make a business case. It's also a big issue. And lack of teachers and trainers. That's, again, one thing which is common to all countries throughout the world, developed and developing, specifically for renewable energy technologies.
Well, thank you. That's a whole range of gaps and challenges, but it's important to flag all of them so that we can look for the appropriate solutions. Christian.
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me, and thank you for talking before me, but you left me a lot of issues now. Yeah, my name is Christian. I work as an independent consultant, and I contributed to this chapter on skills and education and training. And I also work for the IRENA, the implementing agreement, which is called Renewable Energy Technology Deployment, where we also issued a report on education in the renewable sector a couple of years ago. As I said, there are, you mentioned basically all the issues, so I will try to just say something in a different sense, but it's supporting that. One thing what we heard during the day of today, the importance of stability of support policies for renewables. That's really an important, very important issue. Just to show what I mean, we call that chain of influence. You first have policies, the support policies for the renewables. Once you have those, the sector sees, the industry sector sees that there are actually possibilities for business, and then the demand gets created for new jobs, and only then the education sector can come in and provide the skills required for these jobs. So it's the policy sector, then the industry sector, and then the education sector. And there are parts of the education sector that try to be proactive and already give certain courses or trainings foreseeing what potentially will come. But to really have broad impact, you need the stable businesses and the stable demand for the jobs, because otherwise people, if they don't see the opportunity to work in the sector, they just won't take the education that is required for that. So that's one of the challenges of the boom and bust that we heard. To Richard today also supported that, giving the view. So this is a major challenge that I see, that the policies, the support policies for renewables. And then the other part, which I think is very important, technicians. We heard it from Hugo. We also said a technical part, installers, engineers. These are really the main skills gaps that we can see, and we based a lot of the report now on the IRENA report. So thank you very much also for this good report that you had there, provide there. Just to give you an example, we heard that today as well, about Spain. I live in Spain, and there was the Barcelona solar ordinance a couple of years ago saying that all new houses, or not all, but say in general, should have solar thermal installations. And during the housing boom in 2008 or 6 to 2008 roughly, a lot of buildings were built with solar thermal. And now a couple of years later, they ran a project in the Energy Agency of Barcelona to see how many of these solar thermal installations actually work. And they found that the percentage is not so high. And they found out that in the entire value chain of the solar thermal installations, there were issues in the engineering and the design and the installation and the maintenance. So no one was checking actually if it works, this solar thermal installation. And that just illustrates the issues if there's a policy which is well-minded but which doesn't support, which is not supported by a policy considering the impact on skills and jobs. And I think here we will hear a moment from Malaysia and try to set up a more comprehensive view on policies, including education. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian. I would like to give the word to Mr. Ali.
Thank you, Frank and Kristen. I'm from Sustainable Energy Development Authority, SEDA, Malaysia. And actually very interesting that you pointed out about the policy and also the capacity building. In Malaysia, we were quite lucky because before we went into renewable energy in a big way, before we came up with the real policy, we had some small adventures in renewable energy. Starting from the year 2000, we had this small renewable energy producer program called the SRAP, and also the Surya 1000, which introduced solar PV into the country. We learned a lot of things from those small adventures. One of them was that capacity building competency in this renewable energy was really very important if we wanted to progress. So when we came up with the renewable energy policy, renewable energy policy and action plan, or we call it REPAP, in 2010, it had 5 main thrusts. Of course, the first thrust was the legal and regulatory framework, the RE Act, the feed-in tariff, and so on. And the thrust number 2 was to create a conducive business environment where we dealt with and engaged the utilities, the regulator, and so on. But the third thrust, which was part of the policy, was capacity building in renewable energy. So right from the very beginning, our policy already included capacity building. So actually, we concentrated a lot on solar PV because that technology was quite new to Malaysia and also in the region. What Malaysia did is we identified training organizations in the US, in Europe, which were doing solar PV training. So brought over some trainers to Malaysia, and then we trained a core group of people who later became the master trainers and so on. So that's how we started in the solar PV capacity building. Just to give you a very short example, we launched the feed-in tariff in 2011, December 2011, and we had 8 companies which were service providers installing solar PV panels and so on. Today, after about 2 years plus, we have 200 companies. We have 200 service providers. And some of the courses that we run, one is for the engineers, that is the design course to design the solar PV installation. Then we also have a course for the existing electricians. electricians have already been certified, already got a certificate, but they do not have the background in solar PV. So we also have a short course for electricians. Then we also have a course for those hands-on people, the technicians, high school leavers. We have a short course for them, which also includes a stint as intern with the service provider company. So these are 3 courses which are already running. We have already trained a number of people, and sometimes we do get participants from the ASEAN region, Southeast Asia. The next course that we are looking at as far as solar PV or in general RE is integration into the grid. One thing that is quite interesting and we are very happy about is we are working with a lot of the universities, polytechnics, and training institutions. In fact, some universities have even approached SEDA to incorporate our certified training course as part of the degree program. They do not have a renewable energy degree. They have an electrical engineering degree or mechanical engineering degree. They want to incorporate our maybe 2-week course into their degree program. So when the engineers come out, apart from the degree, they also have this certificate in solar PV design, for example. So these are some of the things that we are doing, and we think that as far as solar PV concerned, we are dealing with it as it is, and we have actually trained a lot of people. That's why you can see the number of companies actually from 8 have gone to 200, and some of these companies are also providing service in the region, apart from Malaysia.
All right, thank you. Now, Gerard McGovern, I mean, you basically work for a solution. So please try to, now first address the gaps and the barriers before you actually describe the solution.
Yeah, I'll be brief on the solution, but maybe just my background. I'm responsible for quality management and training strategy at BZEE. So my background is and my perspective on the skills gap is that of the wind industry. And we had this morning, the wind industry in terms of global employment only accounts for 12.5% of renewable employment, but, and that's what Olga emphasized, we're talking about very high quality jobs in the wind industry. And more of a generic perspective first on the barriers. And we, in the wind industry, even in the developed markets, we have a very, very serious skills gap. And the basic barriers is that the training infrastructure in the dimensions that are needed is simply not available. I don't mean lack of classrooms, but if you're talking about real turbine learning, then you need completely different hardware, completely different curricula and training sequences and so on. Secondly, and parallel to the hardware issue, we have what is also missing is a coherent qualification framework, which is transnational or international, because we're talking about a transnational workforce in the sector. And at the moment, we have a lot of competing certificates or letterheads on certificates for this and that, but no coherent qualification framework. And this is something which I think is sorely needed. I'm not talking just about a list of courses, but maybe when we get on to talk about solutions, we can talk about the topics of standardization, certification, accreditation, and so on. Part of the situation or the barriers that we're complaining about or pinpointing, these are homegrown. And it's partly due to the way that the wind industry works or doesn't work or has worked in the past. The wind industry, they are masters of improvisation, but they're not, they don't show much excellence in terms of long-term HR planning. What happens is that the question of hiring and training crops up once the sales department has secured a contract. And then they suddenly need 200 skilled people within 2 weeks. And this doesn't work. So there is this lack of HR management in the industry. HR management is pretty much restricted to stealing engineers from the competitors. So there's no long-term personnel development policy visible in most of the companies, although a lot of the utilities, the big organizations are taking over, and maybe something will happen from their pressure. But that is a serious deficit, which is homegrown, and in-house training is basically restricted to machine-specific induction. And the companies involved in the developed markets generally don't get into developing generic skills, which could be applied to different turbines or different wind farms. And they rely on some other system, the state system or some other training provider providing this. But certainly in the developed markets, particularly in Germany, we're not finding those pre-qualified mechatronics specialists needed and just waiting for an opening in the wind industry. They're competing also with other sectors, which even pay better. And so this is enhancing or increasing the size and the dimensions of this. Basically, it's an HR problem, and there are all different qualitative aspects which we can maybe look at when we go into a solution, talk about solutions. So the barriers are spread. It's not just a matter of the state education system not functioning. The in-house systems are not adequate. If you compare the staffing with the projected installed gigawatts that we're going to expect up to 2020 or up to 2030, this workforce to deliver this promise is simply not available.
Well, thank you. Axel van Perval.
Yeah, thank you, Frank, for the introduction. I represent Alingo, a recruiting company that is specialized in the renewable energy sector. So we actually offer two things. We do permanent placements. We sometimes steal engineers. And we do interim management. So we rent out specialists, interim experts and interim managers to companies who need certain qualifications only for a certain time, for a project, for example, or for a big contract. We are specialized in this field, so we are somehow the linking pin between the companies active in this field and the people, the candidates, the experts working in this field. So we, well, I can maybe share some views on what the companies in this field are searching for. And one observation which I made is that in this field we always talk about we mentioned the STEM functions, the technical functions. They are important, and there is a strong need for those functions. But there are also other functions which are important and which are even in at least in the mature markets increasing in importance. For example, everything related to sales and marketing, because PV companies, wind companies, all of those companies are in very fierce competition by now, and so you need people who have those skills to place the products against your competitors. And it's not only about engineering and about having the best product, but it's also promoting those products in terms of sales and marketing. And one other thing which is important is because it's mainly, if you again look at PV and wind and biomass and so on, it's a project business. So you need people who are able to run projects which is a general skill, which has been mentioned before. So you need project managers, but you also need people who are experienced in project development. This whole process from finding a site until the actual commissioning of the wind farm or the solar park, and also project finance. So I would like to just open the view a little bit, not only to the technical functions, but also to sales, marketing, and finance. So that's one comment. The second comment I wanted to make is that, at least that's our view, because we are being mandated usually for senior positions. The companies we work for, and big utility companies and renewable energy companies, they are looking for experienced people, and that's always a difficulty I have when talking to people who've just finished their studies, to somehow bridge the gap between finishing studies and then being experienced, and because that's what the companies are ultimately looking for, people experienced in the field they are active in, and so it is very important to make it possible for people to have more practical experience. One thing is, of course, internships. Yeah, like that's an start into the business world or into the corporate world, and IRENA with IRELP, they have this platform where they promote internships at not only at IRENA but also at many other companies. So that's very helpful to have such a platform. But also within companies to have things like job rotation, for example. Sometimes it's also a solution not to hire somebody new, but to take somebody who has done something similar and to put him into a new position, to give him the responsibility to get used to to work into a new field, and so enlarge the skill set of individual people. So job rotation, I think, is something companies should offer more often, and what is related to that is something like a mentoring program, to have that companies offer mentors to people who follow the people through the organization along their career path, which goes in the same direction as Gerard has mentioned, that the HR functions inside companies need to develop further as the companies are growing more and more.
Well, thank you, Axel. First, you started by adding to our problems, widening the group of skills that we lack, but then in the end you already basically built a bridge to solutions. Now let me try to summarize it very, very quickly. What we have heard from the panelists is that it's a very dynamic field. So part of your challenge at UREC is that you need to constantly adapt and modify and modernize your courseworks, because it's new things that come on a daily basis. I think the ILO has mentioned that there is a variety of skill sets that that are lacking at the moment. They're not per se unique to this sector, because there's also other sectors that require similar things, and hence there's competition. And then you've also mentioned that there's specifically in the medium to higher level bracket where we see that gap, and specifically in terms of leadership, people that can make decisions. That is where you see a need for additional skill sets. You mentioned the chain of influence, and specifically what happens if you do not see a stable future market. That is absolutely necessary, because there is that chain, and in the end education responds to industry demand, which responds to policy action. I think your Barcelona example is of course testament to the need for skilled people, because probably they were not done by the right by the people with the right skill set. In Malaysia, I mean, you did not really seem to have any gaps and barriers. I mean, you said you've launched a program and the courses were all well, and maybe I've misunderstood, but maybe you can dwell a little bit on it when we come back. I think Gerard very eloquently described the lack of infrastructure. I see that if you have these big new machines in a lot of markets, who can actually afford to put a piece of kit up there so that people can touch and play and feel it. I think that's an important observation. You mentioned the qualification framework. It's probably a jungle in terms of certificates. Everybody does what they think is good. There is no comparison. Nobody knows what the certificate means. I think that's an important aspect. And then you also mentioned the lack of planning within the industry itself and the short-term action that is also probably not something that leads to the best results for the industry in the end. And then, well, towards the end, we already heard some of the solutions in terms of, you know, not only the technical functions, but also the other needs that are there. We could provide internships, we could provide, you know, short-term opportunities, which is, I think, something that the industry is doing. It's not only IRENA, but you see it in many countries more and more. It's also to some extent a substitute to a real job. So there is I think in Germany, for example, there's quite a debate about this because people hire basically fresh graduates for very little money as an intern, and that's also something that we need to be aware of how well that functions in the job market. Now, Jurek, how do you adequately change your program to basically respond to these market dynamics?
Well, we believe that in order to be successful, a high-quality education course should have two main characteristics. One is flexibility, and another one is cooperation with industry. So flexibility, for instance, what we have developed is a course which is divided in 3 semesters. We have a first semester, which is called the core semester, and there the students receive a general introduction to all renewable energy technologies. We believe that this is very important because very often students orientate themselves, are attracted towards the idea of renewable energies, and of course the image of renewable energy is very important in order to attract more and more committed students. However, very often they do not have a clear idea of the type of renewable energy where they want to work. And it's also important for us to make sure that they have a good understanding of all the renewable energy technologies, because they could start working in one technology and maybe in 5-10 years' time they would need to move to another technology in order to respond to the rapid technological developments on the market. So we have this first semester, and then the students can, in the second semester, which is called specialization, they can focus on one specific technology. So currently we offer 5 types of specializations in wind, in PV, in solar thermal, in grid integration, and in ocean energy. And then the third course, the third part of the course is the internship. So as it has been pointed out, it's very important that during the course the students are already exposed to some experience in the industry. And this is also why cooperation with industry is also an important part of a successful education course, not only in order to, let's say, facilitate the students entering, let's say, the job market, but it's also in order to ensure that the curricula offered respond to the needs of the industry. So in order to do this, what we do is that we cooperate with the industrial associations, sectoral associations in the area of wind, solar, and all other technologies. And we launch some regular survey to the industry in order to see what their needs are in terms of required competencies, where they see the challenges arising in the future. And then we match, let's say, the needs from the industry with the competencies which are currently existing on the market, especially in terms of what is offered, of course, by our members, in such a way that we develop a gaps analysis. So we see what are the difference between what is needed and what are the existing competencies. And on the basis of this, we can really focus on what are, let's say, what is the training, the training which is needed, which is further needed, and the areas which further need to be developed. So this is what we currently offer. What is important also, and that's the way our master has been developed, is to ensure that the students do not only have, of course, a very deep technical knowledge, but as it's been highlighted before, we also need the students to develop soft skills. So, for instance, and this is what makes a European master taught in different European universities a little bit of a special case, is that, of course, students are also exposed to different types of teaching. They work in a multicultural environment, in international teams. So somehow they are already exposed to some situations and to what will then be their, let's say, their future challenges in working in such an international and diversified sector as the one of the renewable energies.
Well, thank you very much. I unfortunately will have to leave, so I will hand over to Hugo to continue. But what would interest me from Olga, we just heard that maybe the general interest of young people, for I don't know whatever reasons there are, they're not so interested anymore in real hardcore technical subjects. Is that correct? And then what can we do to address that? I mean, if everybody wants to have an MBA and be a manager of something, and nobody has the right skill sets anymore to actually, build these things, what can we do?
Well, this is a very tricky subject. Many countries actually have tried to resolve the situation, trying to either improve the attractiveness and reputation of vocational education training, and trying to attract people to study technician subjects. Many also try to provide incentives to attract higher education students into technical subjects, engineering subjects in universities. There are quite a good stories in how countries did that, but overall, I must say, the impact on the numbers of those enrolled are not huge, really. So we can't really speak of a success story in this sense. I think what is important, since we speak about behavior of labor market actors, hopefully in the market, in the open free market economy, it's important that alongside with regulations and policies, which are very much needed in order to implement renewable energies and transit to new types of energy generation. But still, apart from that, we also need to provide as good information on the labor market as such as possible, so that people that take a decision about choosing a subject of their studies have full information about what the prospects they have in the future. Here, of course, we immediately encounter two problems. One problem is that for renewable energies, there is a specificity. We really lack well-established classification systems at industry level, also at occupational level, and therefore any econometric type modeling is actually quite hard. So the numbers about the future, well, they can be produced. It's not that they cannot be produced. They can be produced, but of course their reliability is, well, to a certain extent questionable. It's rather they can be produced in terms of scenarios. And then another problem is that also the signals which are given from the demand side to the supply side, they're a bit confusing. If we have these booms and busts all the time, and suddenly governments either implement a regulation, come up with a new policy, and then withdraw. That gives a very confusing signal to education training supply. Imagine those people, those young people mostly, that actually entered higher education in renewable energies in Spain. What do they think now when they don't have jobs? And imagine how many more people will be interested to enter those subjects to study in the future. So it's a big issue, of course. I would like to add something to that, because I think very often it happens that, we say, okay, there is a barrier on the supply side, there is a skills issue on the supply side. But it's not only skills as such. The demand which develops is really driven by technology development and policy and regulation, and therefore we need to have good understanding where technologies will develop and their deployment, what implications they will have on skills. And the same comes to regulation and policies. If they are steady and there is in long term, there is a certainty that they will remain there, it gives a much better signal also to supply and demand. And this can be done much better in the public-private partnership when there is a good collaboration between education training providers, government, different ministries, and the private sector, including actually not only businesses but also trade unions, because the quality of jobs and the attractiveness is also a big issue, and it also helps to resolve skill shortages situation if the quality of jobs and wages so far are improved. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Olga. We have run out of time, so now I'm going to challenge my 4 panelists. We have a policy maker, we have the wind industry, we have HR, we have Christian with huge experience in education and renewable energy. I'm going to give then only 1 minute to each of you to tell me what IRENA should do from now on education and training in renewable energy. So, Christian, you have 1 minute to advise me.
One thing is what you just mentioned in the end, the collaboration. It's very important too that the policy sector, the industry, and the education sector collaborate to see what are the demands, where are the needs, what should be offered by industry, and what should be offered by the policy sector, by the education sector. And I think IRENA can play a role in that to help creating these platforms where you can have an exchange at an international level, and then it has to be further broken down on national and regional levels where other people and organizations should hopefully come in. But I think the part of collaboration is an important issue. And then 15 seconds for the other issue where I think that IRENA can help is the skills of policymakers. I said the importance of policy making is crucial, and policy making for support of renewables, but also in the education sector. And IRENA can help to build these skills by organizing these kind of conferences where policymakers can come and learn, and by providing good policy support that the policymakers actually put the right good policies into place.
Thank you very much, Christian, for your intervention and for keeping it so brief. So, Mr. Ali, you are our delegate from Malaysia. How can we help you? What should we do to help Malaysia?
To continue from where Christian left off, as far as policy making is concerned, I think it would be very good for IRENA to conduct not only conference, maybe seminars, workshops in some of the countries where it's needed, so that people, policymakers in those countries can actually keep abreast what are the policies that are needed. But what I really want to stress here, I think something I would suggest is a bit more challenging and dramatic for IRENA. I would suggest to IRENA to set up a competency development department to actually come up, say, with the, maybe you can employ a few specialists, starting with, say, solar PV and wind. Those are the 2 technologies that really need specialists. You can employ a few specialists to come up with the syllabus and training syllabus and training modules for this, and then offer it to member countries in IRENA to conduct this training, and then those institutions in those countries will be accredited, accreditation process by IRENA. So you can really play a very active role rather than just talking about it and talking about general collaboration. You actually do it yourself. You come up with the syllabus and offer it to member countries, institutions in those countries which are willing to take up and run, and then you can accredit those institutions.
Thank you very much, Ali. Gerard, you have the floor.
Okay, in a nutshell, I criticized HR management in the wind industry, but I think we can learn from some of the trends in HR management in global corporations, which are now shifting from individual certificates to a competency language, because that's the only language that they can communicate with internationally. And if I translate competencies into training and education programs, then we're talking about learning outcomes. And my dream would be for the industry and the training education side of the industry to talk the one qualification, one uniform qualification language. And I think it would enrich IRENA's and IRELP's existing competence to establish this uniform language for a qualification framework. And that would make modular qualifications transparent. It would also open up the perspectives of career paths, not just a one-off qualification, but progression and career paths within the renewable energy sector. And this, I think, we have to promise to potential candidates coming into the industry, and then the education think tank will have done its job in presenting these perspectives and also showing them the opportunities in the sector and educate HR management in the renewable energies at the same time. That would be a great assignment for IRENA. I hope they find that appetizing.
Thank you, Gerard. I'm taking notes for the next work program. And now, finally, Alex, please, you have access. You have your minute. Thank you.
Well, first of all, I think you should continue with the job conference, first job conference, and I think there should be a second and a third and a fourth. I think you could maybe integrate more the corporate world to have, apart from the policies, the political side and the training side, to have the corporate world more here, to have panels with the HR people. I think you should involve those, because you've been criticizing this issue. Involve the HR side and involve the corporate side more into this issue, because those are the people creating the jobs we're talking about. So I think they should have more room on panels like these. And maybe as a third suggestion, you could incorporate some kind of commission, like a virtual commission or a working group, which somehow links up between the training side, the political side, and the corporate side to really connect those parts and to come a little bit away from the pure political side also to the practical side.
Okay, thank you very much. I mean, I think we have almost reached the objective of doing the last part in 4 minutes. So I want to thank you all for all the information. It was a really informative session, and it has helped us a lot looking forward for future IRENA work to support all the renewable energy deployment. Thank you very much.